I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. Jam-packed show tonight with big news and big stories and big trials that we are tracking across the country. And we're going to begin with a case down in Glynn County, Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia. It's a case we've been following since the beginning, the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. And today, for the first time in court, together, the three defendants, and we really got a look at them on how the last many months have been as they've been sitting in jail. Let's take a look at all three defendants. We'll begin with Travis McMichael. Before and after looks much, much different, right? I mean, he's got the mask on. I understand that in court, but still, what a difference in appearance. Let's take a look at his father, Greg McMichael. On the left will be the before, and there on the right is how he was looking inside the courtroom today. Finally, Roddie Bryan, the man who recorded the shooting. That's him on the left and right. Probably of the three, the one who has changed the least, it appears, in the way he looks. Again, can't tell exactly because they're all wearing masks because of the COVID restrictions. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae, who's joining us live from Brunswick, Georgia tonight, where apparently it's colder in South Georgia in May than it was in Minneapolis in April.
Vinny, the temperature is colder today. We've had some weather, some thunderstorm watches, so it has changed, but has not impacted what is going on inside this courtroom and the presence of the people who are here supporting Ahmaud Arbery, even in this pretrial motion hearing.
So give us an idea of today. Is today and tomorrow it will continue? Are these the last time that we can expect everyone to be inside the courtroom before the trial in the fall?
This is the last thing that's on the record as far as the court schedule, but even just listening today to the way they are moving through these motions and how many outstanding issues there were several things that the judge said within 20 days they need to respond or deliver certain things. So I can imagine that there will be other motions hearings as we get closer to that October 18th trial date. But as of now, this is the last time these parties are going to meet in person before that jury selection starts in the fall.
All right, and before we get to some of the arguments that were made and the evidence that was presented today, who was there and what was the scene like today? Because, you know, it's been a while. It's been a while, and it's really the first time all three defendants inside the courtroom in state court.
It has been, and as you mentioned inside, as far as the parties in this case, we saw a new prosecution team. Linda Denikowski was there as the lead prosecutor for the Cobb County District Attorney's Office, and you had all three defendants there with their state attorneys. That roster has not changed. But also inside the courtroom, it's the family of Ahmaud Arbery, the mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, who has been there present, really been a strong force for her son's memory, and she told me that there were moments that she could not be inside listening to some of the things coming out from the defense that they want to get in front of a jury. Also in an overflow room, you saw a dozen of Ahmaud's family and friends, his father also here, aunts, people who are close to him, making sure they watch every moment of what happens in this case.
All right, let's get into today's hearing. One of the big issues was whether or not the jury will hear anything about Ahmaud Arbery's past interactions with police, and there were a series of witnesses. Let's take a look.
Do you recall being involved in the arrest of Mr. Ahmaud Arbery back on December 3rd, 2013?
I do.
Where did that take place?
Brunswick High School.
And what was going on at that time at the high school?
We were having a basketball game, night game, and one of my lieutenants observed a firearm in his waistband.
The suspect in question was trying to take out a Vizio 65-inch TV through the grocery side doors.
And by suspect in question, do you mean Mr. Arbery?
Yes.
What led to you stopping and speaking with Mr. Arbery?
When I was driving that area, patrolling the area, I saw this vehicle that was parked. I don't know the exact, the proxemics of it, but it was pretty far back next to the railroad tracks. And we don't usually, at least I have never seen a car parked in that area way back in the park.
Do you hear Mr. Arbery speaking to you?
I do.
What is he asking you?
Yes, you can get his ID back. Give me a second, man.
Do you hear what he's asking you at this point?
Yes.
What is he asking you?
He's asking why I'm with him, and nobody's driving the car.
We're primarily explaining it to his grandmother so that she understands why we're there, why we're talking to Mr. Arbery. Mr. Arbery just was not, as many times as we've explained it or tried to explain it to him, he just wasn't getting it.
Okay. On the video, you hear that he's saying he wasn't in anybody's yard, he was just running down the road.
Right.
All right. Based on the eyewitness testimony that you had, is that a truthful statement, or does that conflict with the eyewitness testimony that you had?
When we arrived, he was physically within the boundaries of Deputy Brown's property. So he was not on the road at that point in time.
How is it that you have come to meet Mr. Arbery?
He was a regular shoplifter in our store.
Okay. When you say he was a regular shoplifter, how often would you say that he shoplifted?
Not really sure after the first few times I watched him. So I know there were about 8 instances that we've caught him.
All right, Julie, Janae, what's the argument that the defense is making as to why the jury should hear any of this, the relevancy of it?
They're making the argument that this falls under an exception to 404, that this kind of evidence, even though it's prior bad act evidence that typically is not admissible to show that someone acted the same way on the date of incident as they did in the past, but the argument is that they rather are trying to introduce this evidence to show a motive or a plan or intent of that person on the day of the incident, saying that this will help the jury understand why Ahmaud Arbery was running, why he was in that unfinished home. But the state responding and combating that, saying that it's irrelevant because these defendants had no idea about this criminal history of Ahmaud Arbery, and for that reason, it should not be admissible.
So they're trying to say that this criminal history is somehow indicative of what he was doing. I mean, is there any evidence that he took anything, broke anything, removed anything from that house that was under construction? Because I will confess, I have walked through homes under construction myself.
And there were other people who walked through that same unfinished home. There was a couple that was caught on that surveillance video. There were some adolescents who were there looking around, and the neighbor or the homeowner actually said that it was one of the other people who took something as far as fixtures from that home that he was concerned about, but not the times that allegedly Ahmaud Arbery was on that property. And no, ultimately, the day that he was there, or the days previously that it was confirmed that he was there, there's no indication that he took anything or was carrying any type of tools to take something.
All right, another big issue that came up today was the mental health of Ahmaud Arbery. Let's take a listen to Jason Sheffield, one of the defense attorneys.
We want to educate the court about how this is not an illness that goes away, how this is an illness that was not being treated properly with medication. It was not being followed up by the Department of Community Services, where it was like ordered that he have regular visits and help. As a matter of fact, it was just, there wasn't anything happening to help him deal. And so what we'll ultimately be showing to the court is that there is a decline in functioning that we'll see across a timeline, that there are delusions and hallucinations that Mr. Arbery himself is sharing with the evaluators in December of 2018, where these hallucinations are auditory in nature, and they tell him to rob and steal, and they tell him to hurt others. And these delusions also carry with them negative symptoms, what we call negative symptoms, where his ability to communicate, his thought, his registering of the events happening before him, the way that his affect changes, the way that he his reality can become distorted. This is all being seen by people who love and care for him, who are reporting this over time. And this distorted reality, misinterpreting others' intentions, misinterpreting what's said to him or what he's viewing, the way he would tend to interpret things in a negative way, thinking that people have ulterior motives or people are lying to him or that a situation is more scary than it really is. Disorganized thought, poor judgment, that we will see this across the spectrum of this timeline that I will present to Your Honor, and that this leads to this particular aspect of the mental illness behavior, irritability, impulsivity, and possible aggressiveness, where we see fighting, where we see yelling, where we see violating the personal space of other people. And so the law says the court needs to determine if this is relevant.
All right, I'm a little confused. I've covered a lot of criminal cases before, and I've heard about evidence of the mental state of people, but it's usually a defendant charged with a crime that they have no other defense to, so they invoke some level of legal insanity based upon hallucinations or delusional thoughts that the defendant was having. So what exactly, how is the defense saying this is relevant to this case? I'm trying to put the pieces together. I'm not quite there yet. What's their argument?
Vinny, I'm really struck by the tone of Jason Sheffield, who represents Travis McMichael. If you didn't know what this proceeding was about, you'd almost think that he was advocating on behalf of Ahmaud Arbery, trying to explain away something that he did because of this mental health issue, that it made it hard for him to understand things. And this diagnosis is a schizoaffective disorder, a mood disorder that he says he was diagnosed with, and they actually called a nurse to the stand today to talk about it, who is going to come back tomorrow to possibly help this judge understand whether or not this is relevant information. But they made a very narrow argument about this being relevant not to the self-defense claim, because it was something not known to these defendants, but rather this is something that will help the jury understand the facts of this case, that this jury will be wondering about why Ahmaud Arbery acted the way he did on February 23rd of last year, and that understanding his mental condition will help them to put the pieces together for this case.
Okay. All right, I'll see how they try to do that maybe tomorrow. All right, let's take a listen to the prosecutor, because she had a response to all of this.
Ahmaud Arbery is the one in fear for his life. And to say that his mental illness could have caused this? I thought we all agreed it was offensive to say that Ahmaud Arbery's mental illness is the cause of his death. But that's what Mr. Sheffield just got up here and argued. And how do you prove it? How do you prove it at that time he was suffering under any sort of delusion or any sort of mental health stressor whatsoever, based on a few hours in December of 2018? It's not relevant on any issue whatsoever, and it does not survive a 403 analysis. It is far more prejudicial than it is probative on any matter in this case whatsoever. The rules of evidence do not allow this. And despite the defense repeatedly saying the state is the one that provided this to them, somehow that allows them to get into HIPAA and to violate personal mental health status. The public policy angle of this is quite troubling, Your Honor. Basically telling America that they should not seek mental health, because if someone else chooses to victimize you, your private, privileged conversations with your doctor are all of a sudden going to be on that witness stand for everyone to see. So everyone in America should be terrified right now if they're seeing a mental health professional, because somebody's going to choose to victimize that person, and that person's defense attorney is going to come and get their mental health records and go, see, it's really your fault. You have mental health issues. And that's really relevant to why my person gets to victimize you. And that's very offensive. So from a public policy point of view, it's not allowed. And the state's offended that we're trying to go down this road with this. And the rules of evidence certainly do not allow this. It is far more prejudicial than probative on any issue in this case, especially since it's the reasonable standard of the defendants and their behavior that day, not Ahmaud Arbery's. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to piece together what the defense is trying to say here, because a strong argument by the prosecutor, obviously. Are they trying to say that it was his mental illness that was part of the reason that he attacked Travis McMichael, despite the fact that Travis McMichael had a gun in his hand and attacked him, and then Travis had to defend himself? Is that what they're going to say? Is the reason why they had to employ self-defense because Ahmaud Arbery's mental illness it made him attack Travis?
From the argument that we heard today, they're looking at the entirety of that day, that incident and interaction, that it's the reason that he ran. It's the reason that the McMichaels perceived that he was running away, and the reason that they believe they needed to continue to pursue him. And like you said, the way that he reacted to Travis McMichael encountering him and confronting him. And this is not something that we haven't heard before, because we also saw it in one of the initial prosecutors on the case who was writing out his letter as to why he did not intend to file charges or did not think this was a case that warranted charges. It listed that there are mental issues in the victim in this case, or the shooting victim's past, and that is a reason to explain possibly why he went toward Travis McMichael rather than getting away. But we know he was trying to get away for many minutes from these three defendants.
Big day down in Brunswick, Georgia. Julia Janae, Court TV legal correspondent, on the ground at the courthouse, and she'll be there again tomorrow. Julia, thank you so much.
Thanks, Fitty.
When we